Hello, Niels Mahoney here in Malta. We're on air coach, winging our way over to Melbourne. There's another M, so we got that in common. Lucy Holmes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, Lucy.
It is evening here, so good evening from the land down under.
That sounded like a Eurovision Song Contest moment. Good evening from Australia. Here are the votes of the Australian jury. Hey, you'd be good at that. Do you ever want to do that?
Do what, like host something like that or sing on something like that?
Well, you could do either. I was thinking, that's my problem. I go low bar first and then hope to work my way up. I was thinking the person that gives the results, but yeah, hosting it or something like that, that'd be great.
I would be up for any of it because weirdly enough, Australia is now part of the Eurovision Song Contest. So, and I know that annoys a lot of people, but we love it here now. So yeah, I'd be up for anything. It's got a cult following here.
You didn't know you were part of Europe, did you? It came as quite a shocker,
No.
I suppose. You woke up one morning and the whole geography had changed. So it's good to talk to you anyway. So it's Friday evening there, so you're kind of done. Your weekend is starting now, whatever weekends are nowadays. I wanted to ask you, first of all, obviously about the 100% Kylie, but first thing, because our background is radio, right? That's what we do. We talk to radio people, and we work with radio, blah, blah, blah. We're sick to death of radio at this stage. It's all we think of day and night. But you host the morning show on The Light, 89.9 The Light in Melbourne. So how did that come about? Is that just something you fell into, or was that something you wanted to do?
I have done brekkie radio for 12 years now, and back in the day I studied music theatre at university, so I thought I was going to end up on stage in musicals, and I actually have done a lot of performing, and through that study I ended up hosting a late night game show in Australia many years ago, which was one of those call-in shows where people had to like figure out the puzzle on the screen and then call in.
Yeah.
It's not the greatest TV, but it was a great training ground because it was 4 hours every night. It was live. You were interacting. And when that finished up, I ended up going into radio. And I thought, you know what, I'll give radio a crack. It must be easier than live TV. I thought I'd give it a crack for 6 months, put it on the CV. And 12 years later, I am just the biggest radio head you'll ever meet. I'm obsessed with the medium of radio. I absolutely love it. And so that's why I've managed to get up at 4 a.m. for 12 years to do it.
Well, that's the thing. You have to love it, don't you, number one? But it once it gets into your blood, it's like Al Pacino and was it Godfather 2? He says they pull you back in. You can't get out of it. It just, even if you try to leave, you keep getting drawn back into it. It's just so immediate. You find it's different. Obviously it is, but how do you find it different to performing? You do 100% Kylie. You've brought it all around the world. It's the number one Kylie show in the world. Even Kylie loves it. So how different is that for you? Is there a bigger buzz, or answer any of those questions in any order you like?
I think there's so very different things to me. Like pretending to be Kylie on stage is great because it's so energetic and she's so loved and her music is wonderful, but it's very much that very quick thrill. The audience are there, they're vibing off you, you're vibing off them. It's very immediate. You can see their faces, you can see whether they're into it. But with radio, it's completely different because it's me. It's my personality. It's why people tune in. I get to be exactly who I want to be. Yeah. I get to be me. And I love the relationship you cultivate with an audience. And I think that is so special. When I get stopped here, like if I'm down at the shops and a listener comes running over, I think the most beautiful honor is when they throw their arms around you and they're like, you feel like my best friend. And that for me, nothing really beats that connection that you have with a listener. So I think as much as I love being on stage, and that has been the biggest part of my life, I think the connection with people through radio is very hard to beat.
That's the thing as well. It's personal with radio, right? Because you're putting pictures in their heads and they own the pictures. And so as far as they're concerned, you're showing them their life. So it's totally personal, which is a real strength. We were talking with John Coates, who's one of the big Elvis tribute acts in the world. And I was asking him before, why? And he said it was from as a young kid, he heard this guy and he goes, who is this fella? And he needed to find out all about it. For you, was it seeing Charlene fall in the window in the first episode of Neighbours, or what was it?
I am about 11 years younger than Kylie, so I have vague memories of her as Charlene on TV. But look, I grew up just obsessed with singing. It wasn't an obsession with Kylie, and so I studied theatre because I loved acting as someone. So I thought I was going to end up, in Les Mis being Eponine or in Phantom as Christine, but I ended up kind of in a musical of the life of Kylie being Kylie. So I love pretending to act, to be that person. That's what I absolutely love. But the more I studied her, because I've done the Kylie Show for 20 years now.
20 years.
Oh my Lord.
Wow.
20 years. Yeah,
Well
20
done.
years in about a year's time.
That's crazy.
And I was crazy. I was obviously 5 when I started. So
of course.
of course. But the more I studied her in the early days, like I liked her. Like in Australia, you have to like Kylie. It just goes with part of being an Australian.
You're not allowed
you just
not
have
like
to.
her.
You're kicked out of the country to New Zealand if you don't like Kylie. So I liked her like everybody, but I had a real resemblance to her growing up, and I could mimic her voice. And I was born in Britain, so I could do the British voice, and I could mimic her singing voice perfectly. And I looked like her, and so it just became this natural progression to do a show, thinking it might last 6 months, a year. And then 20 years later, it's taken us all around the world. So, and the more I studied her, the more I fell in love with her. And now I would say I'm like a huge fan of who she is as a performer and a businesswoman and as a person.
The thing is, what I like about people like yourself is you diversify, because you do, okay, the Kylie thing, you do the radio thing, and the singing as well. And I was reading, you've sung with Delta Goodrem, with Westlife, was it James Morrison and people like that? I mean, you can't get bored, can you, doing when you have all those different options, all these little tools in the belt that you can just pull out when someone needs them? It must be nice.
Yeah, I like to be a jack of all trades and at least a master of some of them. But I think as an entertainer these days, you have to be able to diversify. You've got to be able to go from doing session vocals to being on stage doing backing vocals to, I love being on TV, I love emceeing, I love being on radio. I love doing a lot of voiceover work. So I think for me, maybe I just get bored easily, but I just love everything I get to do. I feel very lucky that I get to do so many vastly different things. It keeps me entertained.
Have you lived in Melbourne for most of your life? I know you were born in the UK. What age did you move to Australia at?
Moved to Australia when I was a littlie, and then grew up in Brisbane for my childhood years, and then moved to Melbourne about 21 years ago. So moved here after I graduated from uni.
It's a good town.
Melbourne is, I'm completely biased, but if you're ever going to visit Australia, I would say that Melbourne is the place to come. It's the most cultural place. It's the funkiest place. It's got incredible food, the nightlife, the where it is on the country. It's got beaches. It's got rainforests. It's absolutely incredible. Best place in Australia. I
got to know a little bit long distance. My daughter lived there for a year, and I was getting all the videos, getting all the pictures, getting all the everything, and I was kind of going, yeah, that looks all right. I lived in Vancouver for a long time. They look very similar. Got the same kind of a vibe to it,
yes.
almost that kind of coffee culture kind of vibe, street cafe kind of vibe to it. It was nice. I really enjoyed that. Can you go around Melbourne? Are you okay? Nobody hassles you. Kind of goes, look who it is. Or do you ever get that attention, or can you be low profile, or how does that work? And be honest. You can blow your own trumpet if you want to.
Oh, I think it's a funny little thing, because people now know me pretty much as either the girl who does Kylie, because I think I've been on every TV show in Australia for 20 years. I pop up everywhere just being Kylie. So a lot of people will stop me and go, oh, you're the Kylie. And I'm like, yes, I'm the Kylie. But on the flip side of that, especially in the last probably 5 to 10 years, it's the light listeners who stop me wherever I go, which I love, because we've got 1.2 million monthly listeners in Melbourne now, which is a huge cum. And so I love getting stopped in the shops, but it just means I've got to be on my best behavior all the time, because you never know who's watching.
That's the thing. I remember when I was young, you'd see somebody who you consider, remember when you're young, everybody on TV, even if they're on for 1 second, is famous, right? They're a superstar because they're on the TV, especially back when TV was everything. And if you saw them in the street, it was like a pretty big deal. But if they weren't well dressed or they looked a bit tatty, it was like, I thought they were superstar. So there is that as well, isn't it? There's that angle. If somebody sees you, you do want to kind of look half decent. So I don't know. I don't have that, because I'm a radio face, right? So nobody knows what I look like generally. So I don't have that pressure. Never did. But I'm just curious about that. Are you conscious of that as you go out?
Well, I think in this age of selfies, that I think is, I always find it funny when people stop me for a selfie and you're at the shops, because I think half the other people walking past are going, who the hell is that girl? I do not know who that is at all. Why are they having a photo with her? Yeah. And then you feel like an absolute idiot, because you feel like going, they just listen to me on radio. I know you don't know who I am. But I think everyone pulls out their phones these days. And I mean, I love putting on a little bit of makeup anyway, but I don't think you wouldn't find me at the shops in a tracksuit with no makeup on. You'll never see that. I like my clothes and my makeup.
I like the way you say that as well. That sometimes it is good to bring yourself down as well and to realize you're just, you're just another person. Who the hell am I anyway to get
yeah.
I mean, because I think if you got the big head, it's the end of you, isn't it? If you get the whole ego thing, it's the end of it. It's over. It's totally over.
Yeah. I think if you're on radio and you believe your own hype, then you will lose all your connection with the audience, because the whole point of radio is being relatable and just being you, and you're all living the same crazy life. And that's my most favorite thing, just going, you know what, at the moment I'm trapped at home, I'm in isolation, I'm a single mum, and people love that. They don't want you to come on and be like, well, I think I'm all this, there's a few radio hosts in Australia that I've heard recently, and they'll be talking about like their $7 million mansion, or their Porsche. And I think that's the easiest way to lose an audience, because suddenly you have no connection with them because they can't understand your life. So my favorite thing is trying to be as very real. And that's why the listeners connect to me, because there's no facade with me. There's no BS. I am who I am. And I love the honor of sharing that with people.
I can almost hear you on air now as you're talking, and I could imagine when you put the headphones on and put the mic up, it's the same person. Yeah, and that's a strength, right? That's
totally.
That's what people go for. Programmers want that kind of thing. They want the natural human being. That's what we go for. I've got to tune in one morning, the afternoon, evening, whenever the hell the time difference is. I'm rubbish at time difference, and have a listen. So it's 89.9 The Light, and we'll see you all around again. When all this is over, we'll see you touring again. You thinking?
Yes, yeah. They're hoping so. I mean, who knows what the world will look like and how long that will take, but can't wait to get back on stage and see people. But the greatest part about this is that radio hasn't stopped, which just shows how incredible the medium of radio is. Like, radio has been so incredible during this whole coronavirus, because the listening numbers are up, the time spent listening is up, everybody is tuning into radio, and I think it's kind of a renaissance for radio, which has been really exciting.
Damn, you really are Radiohead in your soul, aren't you? TSL is up, Cume is up, Tayal, that's it. That's fantastic.
I can't help it. I love it. I went and studied. There's an incredible degree in Australia at the AFTRS University, which is the Australian Film and Television Radio School. It's kind of the preeminent one in the country. And I went and studied last year doing the program director's course. And I absolutely, like, I've loved radio, but doing the program director's course and content director's course was just next level. And so literally I was obsessed with radio before that, but now I literally live and breathe it. So
that's gonna stand by you so much in the future, getting the PD course. Well done. That's awesome. That's gonna be great. So you'll be programming next. Good on you. Well done. Lucy Holmes in Melbourne, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Stay safe.